Moderator for today's event, which is Mira bin Muhammad Taufiq as your second moderator and Nurul Farzana bin Muhammad Taufiq as your final speaker for today's presentation session. Before we start, I would like to read the rules and regulations that need to be complied during the full event. Rule 1. The time allotted for the presentation session is only 15 minutes. Rule 2. The time allotted for the question and answer session is 5 minutes only and starts when the presenter starts responding. Rule 3. The panel starts asking questions when the presentation session has ended. Rule 4. The bell will be rung once in the 10th minute of the presentation and twice in the 15th minute of the presentation, which marks the end. And the session will begin. Rule 5. Questions from the speakers should take precedence over other panels. Rule 6. Reserves the right to use the microphone or stop the presenter during the question and answer session if it is found to have exceeded the stipulated time period. Now, let's start the ceremony with the first presenter, Nur Arif bin Izamzuri from Lesson 1 to present her presentation. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum. On a very good day, I give to my panels, Mr. Chan, and for Dr. Masa, and my fellow friends. Today, I would like to present my business research, which is entitled SL Teacher Training Perception on Watching Movie for Language Learning. Okay, my name is Nurul Zamzan binti Zamzuri. I'm from Lesson 1, and my supervisor is Sir Azman bin Muhammad. Okay, we'll start with the first one, which is the background of study. During the online learning session, everyone explored English in mirror disguise of seeking entertainment. Considering all the efforts that we had, why not we address all of the variety mediums that we had available for informal language learning? So, significantly, English movie is actually an optimum content for language learning because visual quality is an excellent learning material. Learner can actually gain understanding of the language by interpreting the context within the given. And as a matter of fact, lesser teacher training receive limited exposure to the formal language learning. So, by utilizing the movie watching activity, it will be very beneficial for them to develop their language proficiency. Problem statements. There are three main problem statements from these research. The first one is the opportunity, the second one is the awareness, and the third one is preference. As I mentioned before, related to the opportunity, this training actually has limited opportunity to the formal language learning. As an instance, we have classes related to the language learning during our first years of study, which is as a moving on to the second point, which is awareness. Lack of awareness on utilizing movie watching as language learning session. The lack of awareness will contribute to the lack of motivation. As mentioned by Suzuki and Keller 2004, internal motivation will help the learner to actually seek any available medium for them to improve their language by themselves. What about the last point, which is preferences? Teacher training preferences will actually influence the quality of them when watching the movie, whether it will be beneficial for them or not. Okay? The purpose of basically, the study focus on to investigate the effectiveness of movie watching activity for language development about IPG-KDRI lesser students. It notes on the relationship between film preferences and their language development. On this session, we focus the film preferences on three main points, which is preferred frequency of viewing movie, preferred language of movie, preferred language of success. This will be the main preference that we will investigate in this study. Okay, research objective, also known as RO. First, identify teacher training perception in watching movies. Second, to find out the teacher training perception on the implication of watching movies on their language development. And the last one is about to find out whether the teacher training preferences in watching movies is actually affecting their language development or not. Moving on to the research question, what is teacher training preferences in watching movies? What is teacher training perception on the implication of watching movies on their language development? And does teacher training movie preferences actually affect their language development? And for the null hypothesis, there is no clear relationship between teacher training with watching preferences and their language development. This for the null hypothesis. Moving on to the significance, basically there are only two significant for this research. One is for self-reflection, and the second one for acknowledgement. Teacher training will reflect upon their past movie preferences and how it has influenced their language enhancement, and then they will adjust accordingly. After the finding from this study will be reviewed. And the next thing is acknowledgement. Educators, IPGM, lecturers, and also teacher training as a teacher themselves will acknowledge the benefit of watching movies for language learning and implement it in their personal and also professional life. Okay, past research. There are three main focus of the past research, which is from Yakub, Isengwa, Aksu, Attack Popular Tunai, and also Wayman. Okay. For Yakub, past research, his research centered on the feasibility of using watching movies as part of the formal learning for other undergraduate in UITM. Findings from this research shown that most of the learners have the desire to use the language that they observe in the film that they have previously watched. And as for the APSU, his research focused on Turkey, focused on the foreign student in Turkey. It said that it is important that the Turkey adult learners to be exposed to the authentic form of the language, which is for them to learn the language. And then the result found that the movie aids on the comprehension of accents, dialects, idioms, proverbs, slang, and also help with the pronunciation, vocabulary expansions, and also listening skills. As for the last past research, it is from Winning 1970. She had a research mainly focused on the subtitle movie. It's a movie with subtitles. And then her research undergo to the undergraduate from Advent University, Indonesia. And the finding from her research is that most of the respondents believe that they gain the desire to learn, want to know what the meaning of the words they have read in the subtitle of the movie that they have watched. That's all for the past research related to this study. Moving on, research design. This research uses the quantitative technique questionnaire survey to collect data from the ESS teacher training at a teacher. It is suitable because it discuss on the perception of the students. So survey is the most suitable research design to use. Okay, next, sampling. Sampling are divided into population and also sample. For this population, the inclusion condition for this study is to be member of the semester 9 TESOL PGPDRI community. In total, there are 98 of the students, and they are coming from 5 different classes. Why do I choose only semester 9 yet PGPDRI? This is because according to Majid 2018, it said that it is necessary for the researcher to have a conditioning, inclusion conditioning in choosing their population. By doing so, they will have a specific findings which will target specific group of people. And then moving on to the sample, I follow through with the Tragic and Morgan table, KMT, and then for the population size, which is 98, I discovered that we need to have a sample size at least 76 in order to have an accurate result. Okay, as for the research instrument, my research instrument is a questionnaire, and the questionnaire response is within the Likert scale, which is 1 to 5. 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. There are 4 sections in this questionnaire. Section A, which is the demographic. consists of 2 items. Section B, teacher training experience with watching movie, consists of 5 items. Section C, Section C, teacher training perception of film watching for language learning, consists of 10 items. And the last one, Section D, teacher training view for movie watching effectiveness as subject, 2 items. And then based on my pilot study on 2 participants, I have to discount, I gained a reliability test, which is from Alpha, excellent result, 0.925. Okay, this is my research process. It is all within the 5 months. First, I seek information, and then second, I make a proposal, and then third, I gain my supervisor approval. After on, I did some pilot study. After that, I conduct my research, and finally, I analyze my data. For data collection procedure, the first stage, as I mentioned before, pilot study on 12 participants, and then stage number 2, feedback received, and then some of the situation already applied. And stage 3, questionnaire link, I'll be conduct research by distributing the questionnaire link into the WhatsApp group. And then stage 4, after I already received at least 76 of responses from the 98 of students, I start with my data analysis using SPSS program. Okay. Data analysis procedure within 2 weeks. First, I make a data collection, which is 2 months before, and then I answer my first research question, which is using the descriptive analysis percentage with the value of percentage of section B. Section B is about the teacher training preference in using movie watching, preference for movie watching. For the stage 3, I answer research question number 2, which is teacher training preference in watching movie. On the implementation on how much movie we help them with implementing their wishes after we implementing their language development. Okay, the last one, I use descriptive analysis, which is mean and standard deviation. Stage 4, answer question number 3, which is using the inferential analysis of ANOVA test. For this, I use 3 different ANOVA tests based on the 3 preferences that I want to relate with the language development. So the first one is opportunity to watch, movie preference, and also subject preference. The last one, I conclude the teaching finding. Okay, moving on with the data finding for research question number 1. What is teacher training preference in watching movie? Watch movie. First question. Okay, as you can see here clearly, there's actually some mistakes over here because my frequency is actually the highest, which is the highest response from the respondent, while my most, this is the lowest result from the respondent. I believe that I actually put a wrong degree of frequency, which does not suit with the lesser student schedule as a student data. Then so this will affect later on the question number 3. Okay, for the second question, I prefer to watch English movie. Yes, most of them prefer to watch English movie. For the third question, I also enjoy another foreign movie. Okay, why do I include this question in my instrument? Is because what if other movie is also an option? It will be an distraction. So even though they watch movie frequently, it will not necessarily be English movie because most of them also prefer foreign movie and also Japanese. So it will serve as distraction. Next is I always watch movie with subtitles. Yes, most of them prefer English movie. Reason for English movie preference because most of them agree that they are comfortable with the language. Okay. Data finding, which is question number 2. Okay. As you can see here from the mean and standard deviation value, the highest standard deviation value is from C9, which is, and the lowest mean is 4.01, which means that most of the students are actually just between 3 and also 4. Most of them does 5, which is strongly agreed. So this shows that the C9 item, which is English movie can improve my writing skills. Both of them probably does not agree with how English movie can actually improve their writing skills. As for the lowest standard deviation and the highest value of mean, it is from C6 and C5. By watching English movie, I get to learn new words. This shows that most of them agree that they get to learn new words by watching English movie. The data finding, which is question number 3. Does teacher training movie preferences affect their language development? As I already mentioned before, there is and mistake in the, I make an error in the consequence which does not suit with the student, their ESL teacher training lifestyle as a student. So there is actually a very high significant value. Therefore, the null hypothesis is accepted because there is actually no correlation between opportunity to watch movie and language development. As for the another two, movie preferences, English movie preferences, English language, and also subtitle preferences, actually very low, lower than 0.01, which is the alpha value, shows that there is actually a very significant relationship between English both of them with the language development. Therefore, the null hypothesis is rejected for this disease. This is my recommendation. This is the sample population target teacher training advanced, which is an advanced language learner. For future research, they should study on different intermediate and also novice. Other than that, the term movie in this features focus on the well-published movie and not like any video-like sources like music video or TikTok or Instagram reels. So why not the future research focus on their study on that method? And the last one is relation-dependent variable is rather general, which is language development. Why not the future research focus more on the terms of language development into vocabulary mastery or listening skill or speaking? Okay. The implication. Teacher training will actually switch their movie preferences. Lecturer will apply movie viewing as a method during their classes, and FPGM will add a pedagogical focus specifically on utilizing movie techniques. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, first and foremost, congratulations to Samzarif for being able to present today afternoon. Okay, I have one question here. Among your findings, how many findings that you have?
There are 3 focus.
Okay, so among your findings that you have come up with, which finding that most interesting to you, to your opinion?
I already mentioned before, I have made an error related to the frequency of watching movies. I actually think that because I personally reflected upon myself because I like to watch movies frequently, but for others it might not be like that. I think the result turns out to be how the null hypothesis is accepted is because I did not specifically mention that their movie experience during the online learning. If I were to explain that their movie preferences were during their online learning, so they might choose a higher number of frequency, therefore it will be more relevant with my degree of frequency that I already put. So it's interesting how your degree of frequency will actually affect the whole result of the final findings. That's how I see.
Thank you, Samzari.
Okay, congratulations, you have done. For me, it's an interesting topic. I have one question and one cadangan. Okay, the question is in the sampling. Use Mohan and Krinci. Did you see the table, Mohan and Krinci table?
Yes.
So your population was?
28.
So they recommended?
70.
Dengan berapa percentage dia punya tu?
The difference percentage.
No, I mean, kita kata percentage. If you see Mohan and Krinci, there is 2 tables, one for science. The percentage of error is only 0.2%, I think. Did you scrutinize the Mohan and Krinci table?
No, I just refer to the one table that I found and then I just thought that.
Yeah, because it's 1976, if I'm not mistaken. Table, you just look into it and state what is the margin of error. Okay. Dia ada sebut di situ. Untuk sastra, margin of error can be 5 and less lah. Tapi for science, when you're developing ubat or medicine, the margin of error and the population will increase. So I want you to state that in your, I mean, you can, I mean, you are the finalized ke? Habis dah print, habis dah?
No, not yet.
Okay, kalau boleh masuk itulah. Okay, yang kedua, cadangan. Okay. Songs and are always said to be can improve English. Okay, but what kind of songs? Songs sang by Kenny Rogers. His English is almost perfect. Tapi kalau satu grup yang grup funky group, their kind of song and language is haywire. Okay, so saya cadangkan even movie lah. Which movie? The King and I. Movie tu good English. Ada movie you have to recommend. Kita kata di sini diperhalusi dan dimurnikan. Movie jenis apa? Adakah dari language itu dia memenuhi kehendak kita tak? The characteristics that we want. So ini cadangan that you must add one more criteria to make sure that the movies that you choose is suitable for the students. We don't know lah kategori student dia tu kalau primary school, and how is the movie going to benefit. Ada movie yang ada many negative effects tau. So the teachers have to classify and bahagikan. Then maybe you can recommend these are the movies. Okay, ini cadangan lah. Okay, thank you.
That's all for me, thank you.
Yang ini kita hantaran. Okay.
So hello and good afternoon, everyone. So I would like to present my thesis, which is a survey on training teachers' perceptions of homework and its implementation during practical. My name is Wanur Alia Nadira binti Wan Zaidi, PISMP June 2018, TESOL 2, and my supervisor is Tuan Haji Azman bin Mohammed Noor. Okay, first let's go to the background of the study. Since primary school, Malaysian students have already been familiarized with the terms homework. It was considered essential in our education system since some might say it assists the students' learning and it can enhance their academic achievement. So homework allows students to enhance their study habits and performance to increase their academic results according to Promin and Jukarat 2019. Homework assignments might assist students in improving their performance by pushing them to practice learning skills outside of the limited classroom hours. So, homework such as ungraded quizzes, essays, and so on is a type of formative assessment intended to guide and train students to create higher level cognitive connections. However, homework is still a contentious issue. The dispute over homework is ancient with opinions altering throughout the years. Many studies have been done on homework and the result demonstrates so many different views. So if you search online, Google online, on the research of homework, there are so many research that has been done on homework with so many different views and demonstrates so many different results. Some might support the implementation of homework and some might oppose the implementation of homework. So homework has been a constant source of contention worldwide, as I mentioned before, and Malaysia is no different. The study is being done in response to the various issues raised by studies demonstrating different views of homework. As I said, there's a lot of study that has been done from the perspective of teachers, from the perspective of pupils, and so on. However, there is still a lack of homework studies from the perspective of trainee teachers. So in conjunction with all the problems aforementioned, the study is intended to fill up the gap in the research field in which few studies are being conducted among trainee teachers. And I believe that the perspective of trainee teachers is also important because we are the future educators which will determine the future education system. So the purpose of this study is to identify June 2018 intake TESOL trainee teachers from IPG KDRI perceptions on homework, and also to study the implementation of homework during practical one amongst the TESOL trainee teachers. Next, there are three objectives of my research. The number one is to identify the trainee teachers' perceptions of homework. Second one is to investigate the implementation of homework during trainee teachers' practicals. And the last one is to find out the correlation between trainee teachers' perceptions of homework with their implementation of homework during practical. So these are the research questions. There are so three, and these questions will be answered in the findings after this. So the result of this study may identify future teachers' perspective of homework, which will help the future researchers, such as our junior, who want to use this as a guide with professional development on homework concerns. So the result might help educators and researchers look more thoroughly at the intangible ideas claimed to be advantages of homework. And lastly, administrators and teachers can utilize the data to enhance or adjust their present homework policies and procedures in a joint effort. So there are four main related past researches in this study. Okay, so previous research has proven that homework improves pupils' learning and success. So according to Cooper, the academic purpose of homework are to help children gain factual knowledge, enhance intellectual study abilities, develop good attitude about homework, and recognize that learning may occur anywhere, not only in the classroom. Next one, this study from Bernal, Sidhu, and Chan Yuen-Fu is from the perspective of teacher, and the result shows that 85% agreed that homework should not burden students and should be appropriate according to the student's level. So furthermore, from the data reveal that most of the teachers emphasize the instructions for homework to ensure the pupils understand the task. And this research from Natalie Serrani 2020, she focuses on both teachers and students' perception of homework. And the result shows that both student and teachers show positive perceptions of homework. So as I mentioned, there are some researchers who opposed the implementation of homework. So according to survey done in Trinidad and Tobago by Mahara, Sharma, and Sharma, homework is viewed as a waste of time by 65% of the pupils in the class. And the overall result suggests that more pupils oppose homework implementation in the school. So this is from the students' point of view. So this is, so let's move to the research design. This survey is this is a survey research, and I use quantitative approach to collect the data because quantitative approach incorporated more numbers of respondents. So since I want to study the thinking culture of a population, which is the perceptions of the TESOL trained teachers of homework, so I think I need to use more respondents to collect the data so that it is more reliable. So the population for this research is 98 June 2018 TESOL trainee teachers in IPG KDRI, and 80 out of the 98 trainee teachers were selected to answer the questionnaire. Okay, for the instruments used for data collection, I used a questionnaire. So the questionnaire consisted of 24 items to collect the data for the study, and I used 5-point Likert scale. And there are three sections in this questionnaire. Section A was basically about demographic, where I collect the gender, practicum 1 school area, and class. Section B consisted of 12 questions about the trainee teachers' perceptions of homework. And section C consisted also 12 questions about trainee teachers' implementation of homework. And it is divided into 5 aspects of the implementation, which is the purpose of homework, students' ability, feedback, instructions, and also the frequency. Okay, so this is the research procedure. Okay, first I select the topic that I want to study, which is homework. And then I clarify and identify the research objective and also research questions for the study. After that, I review literature that are related to the research question and research objective. And then I determine research design that is suitable for this study. And then I collect the data, analyze the data, and I draw conclusion using the findings. As for the data procedures, after the questionnaire has been constructed and after my supervisor has validated my questionnaire, I distributed the questionnaire to June 2018 intake test training teachers by giving the link of the Google form to the representative of each class. And the respondents were informed of the due date beforehand, so that I can ensure that the research process can be done within the estimated time. And then after data received from the questionnaire, I will analyze using SPSS to receive an approximate analysis for the study. As for data analysis procedures, okay, once the answered questions were collected, the data was transferred into SPSS spreadsheet so that it will be more systematic and easier to analyze. And then I go to data analysis. For this study, I use both descriptive and inferential analysis. For research question 1 and 2, I use descriptive analysis, and for research question 3, I use inferential analysis, which is Pearson correlation. And then for the presented statistic, each item analyzed was discussed and described in details. The summary of the analysis of each section was also elaborated to provide a general statement on the findings for each section. So we go to the data findings for research question 1, what is the perception of trainee teachers of homework? So this is the item, the mean, and also the rank of the mean. Okay, I have highlighted 2 items that have got the highest mean. Okay, higher means meaning that the statement gets the higher number of agree by the respondents. Okay, so the findings shown in the table generally show that tested trainee teachers have positive perceptions of towards homework because most of the means are above 4.0, which shows high number of respondents agreeing to the statement. For instance, as I highlight just now, homework helps students practice skills or prepare for tests. And the second one is homework to assess student skills and knowledge. These two are about basically about student skills and knowledge. So this has been supported by Cooper 1989 just now. The academic purpose of homework are to help children gain factual knowledge and enhance intellectual study abilities. And also be supported by Benvenuti and White in their research also proven that homework improves pupils' learning and success. This is the data findings for research question 2, which is about how is the implementation of homework during training teachers practical. So I also have highlighted the 2 items that get the highest mean. Okay, next, let's go to the discussion. So generally, out of the 5 aspects that I have mentioned, instructions show the highest mean on the implementation of homework during practical because the 2 items that get the highest mean are about instructions. Number 1 is I will make sure homework instructions are clear and understood by the student. And number 2 is I will explain these homework instructions prior to assigning them. So this has been supported by Gurnam, Sidhu, and Chan Yun Fo revealed that most of the teachers emphasize the instructions for homework to ensure the pupils understand the task. And lastly, the data finding for research question 3. Is there any significant correlation between trainee teachers' perception of homework with their implementation of homework during practical? So this is a table for Pearson correlation. As you can see, the result is 0.464. So the discussion is, based on the result of the correlation analysis shown in the table, okay, so the R value is 0.6.4, and as the value is less than 1, and it is between the range of 0.4 and 0.7, it could be concluded that the trainee teacher's perception of homework and the implementation of homework during practical is moderately correlated. So in conclusion, the data findings have successfully provided insights on perceptions of homework among June 2018 intake test trainee teachers of IPG KDRI and its implementation during practical. So it shows that the result shows that the trainee teachers shows positive perception towards homework, and also in terms of implementation, homework instructions is the most important aspect considered by the trainee teachers when they are implementing the homework during their practical. Also, there was a moderate correlation between the trainee teachers' perception of homework and the implementation of homework during practical. As for the recommendation, I have 2 recommendations. Number 1 is it is suggested for the future researchers that this study be conducted to a larger sample, so that the sample will, the data collected will be more reliable, because according to Kelly, the reasoning for this larger sample may be able to give more reliable data. So for example, the researcher, for the future researchers such as our junior, may administer the survey to other IPGs in Malaysia, so that they will have a clearer view of trained teachers' perceptions of homework. And the second one is future researchers also should consider other variables to identify the training teachers' perceptions of homework, such as students' achievement and the influence of homework, students' socio-economic background and their relationship with the perception of homework. And by this, the researcher may discover more interesting findings of the Malaysian perceptions of homework. As for the implications, the finding from this study can enlighten the MOE on the necessary actions to improve the implementation of homework in primary school. So the data from this study can be used as guidance on how future educators are prone or tend to implement homework to their students, and it can be used to improve the homework policies in the future. So as for the teachers, they can use the findings to implement homework for their students. For instance, the importance of giving homework feedback and the significance of giving clear instructions of homework prior to assigning them. And the last one, apart from that, the results from the research done will be able to provide insights for the school administrators to consider reconstructing the homework implementation by the teachers.
Congratulations, Arya Nadira, for your presentation this afternoon. So your topic is about the teachers, the trainee teachers' perception of homework. Okay, so during your data collection, okay, did you find anything or any surprise? Anything surprise you when you did your data collection?
Right. Okay. Yes, of course. Because there were so many respondents, so each of them will have different views. So I was surprised because for the questions, there was one question for frequency where I asked, I often give homework to my students, and the means was very low because I was expecting the young educators or teacher trainees have have implemented more homework to the students, and I think it is important because homework can be considered as formative assessment, and it is essential in the education system.
Okay. That is what you learned from your language assessment.
Yes.
Okay.
Here, one more, yeah, Nadira. Okay, Nadira, one of your findings is that the most popular thing is most popular ke yang dapat 4 point berapa?
Implementation. The most preferred.
Preferred was clear instruction kan?
Yes.
Why is it so? In your view lah, why is it?
Okay, I also think that instructions is important because if we don't give clearer instruction, especially for the primary school students, they will not be able to do the task that have been given. Because in my experience from my practicum one, my students, especially the lower
classes
okay, they are not able to do their task independently. So they need our guide. So that is why we have to give them clear instructions on how to do the task.
Yes, it's very true. Primary schools, if students don't understand the question or they don't understand what you are teaching, they will close their minda and not concentrate. So they can't do the work. Okay, very good. I'm happy with the answer. Okay, I'm coming back to a little more is your sampling. Why did you choose 80 out of 98?
Because I use Craigie and Morgan.
Morgan and Cringy. Okay, very good. You must have a theory to support your sampling. Because Morgan and Cringy, nobody can ask question already because it is a well-known theory, Morgan and Cringy. Tapi you kena macam tadi jugalah, ada
Alright, support.
the support aid dengan margin of error berapa kena state margin of error. Ada dalam mohon and preaching table sebelah ni sains, sebelah sastra, atas sekali dia akan terkata margin of error. You state that. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Right,
Right.
thank you. Now, let's welcome the next presenter, Bilik from the Selari presentation. Welcome. Okay, thank you, moderator. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. I bid to the respected panels, my other candidates and other presenters, and also the timekeeper. And here you are. Okay, so my name is Elisara binti Mahaya from Tasel 3. Okay, my supervisor is Madam Suhana binti Ahmad, and I'm going to present my study, which is a survey on CFR readiness among ESL pre-service teachers June 2018 intake in IPG KDRI. So this is going to be the presentation overview. There are 17 subtopics in total, so I'm going to explain one by one. So let's move on to the background of the study. Okay, the idea for the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, also known as CFR, was initially presented in 1991, one symposium in Switzerland. So the importance of English ability has grown globally, and CFR is now recognized and used significantly in over 40 countries outside of Europe, including Malaysia. So therefore, as Malaysia is already implementing CFR in the new syllabus, ESL teachers must prepare themselves to be equipped with CFR readiness. So the reason why this study is conducted is because not as this curriculum is still new, so not many studies are conducted to find the teachers' CFR readiness. Okay, let's take a look at the problem statement. So as I have mentioned earlier about CFR readiness, I've seen that when I read all the past researchers, there are not many local studies, and the studies are done in small scale. So this study is conducted to fill in the gap of previous studies about CFR readiness in the local context, covering pre-service teachers. So the purpose of the study is to identify the CFR readiness level among ESL pre-service teachers, June 2018 intake in IPG KDRI, to find the main factor affecting CFR readiness and the correlation between the factors with CFR readiness. All right, so moving on to the next slide. Okay, I'm going to explain a bit on what factors did I take consideration when I talk about this CFR readiness. So I take into consideration 4 factors, which are training, competency, content and material selection, and CFR-based school-based assessment. So these are the research objectives. I have 3. Number 1 is to investigate the level of CFR readiness in implementing CFR during the first and second phases of practicum among the ESL pre-service teachers June 2018 in IPG, right? Number 2 is to examine the main factor influencing the CFR readiness of the ESL pre-service teachers June 2018 intake in IPG, right? And last but not least, to identify the correlation between the level of CFR readiness and the factors influencing CFR readiness of the respondents. Okay. So the research questions, I have 3. Number 1 is, what is the level of CFR readiness among the respondents in implementing CFR during the first and second phases of practicum? Number 2, what is the main factor influencing CFR readiness of the respondents? And number 3, what is the correlation between the level of CFR readiness and the factors influencing CFR readiness among the respondents? Okay.
So what is the significance of this study? The significance of this study, it will give impact to pre-service teachers, ESL pre-service teachers from other cohorts and other IPGs, IPGM and MOE. So pre-service teachers can get a head start on what is CFR readiness. IPGM can review and revise the effectiveness of their current training programs. And MOE can gather feedbacks from pre-service teachers in IPG KDRI to monitor and evaluate the success of existing CFR related efforts. Okay, moving on to the past researchers. So I have already read a lot of past researchers regarding CFR readiness, but I'm going to explain more on 3 past researchers. Okay, for the first one is conducted by Nurul Fariha Muhammad Uri and Muhammad Salihuddin Abdul Aziz in 2018. It is the respondents for this study is teachers from secondary school, and their findings revealed that majority of teachers had minimal understanding, little exposure, and a low degree concerning the CFR. Okay, the second past research is conducted by Noor and Azina Abdul Aziz in 2019, and it reveals that several significant issues were discovered, including lack of training, non-local based textbook, and teaching and learning tools. And last past research conducted by Nurul Fariha Mumuri in 2017, it is revealed that only a small number of primary school teachers were qualified to teach English. So from all of these past researches, it mentioned all the 4 factors that I studied in this survey. Okay. Then for research design, I did survey. It is a quantitative research, and I did questionnaire. Okay. So for the respondents, I selected all ESL pre-service teachers June 2018 intake, and then I chose 80 of them based on the Cressy and Morgan table with 5% of
Error.
Error. Yes, thank you. Okay, so the requirement of the other requirement of this study is pre-service teachers must finish 2 phases of practical, and they must have experience, first experience using the CFR syllabus in the classroom. Okay. So the data instrument, I use questionnaire. So the respondents, they have to answer the questionnaire via Google Forms. Okay, there are 30 questions, and I use 4 Likert scale, and I adapted the questionnaire from a study by Nabila Yassin and Hamidah Yaman. So there are 5 sections. Section A is to identify the CFR readiness level. Section B is to identify the training. C for competency, D for content and material selection, and E for CFR aligned SPE. 2 bases. Okay, so next, this is the research procedure. I started off with selecting the topic, and then I clarify the research objective and research questions. Then I review literature, select research design, collect data, analyze data, and draw conclusions. And then for research, for data collection procedures, the first one, I obtain approval of research title from my supervisor. And then I have a discussion with her about ways to conduct the research, building the questionnaires, and all aspects of the research. And then I obtain approval of items in the questionnaire from the supervisor. And I conduct pilot tests via Google Form involving 30 pre-service teachers June 2018 intake from other IPG, namely IPG Bahasa Antarabangsa, IPG Ipoh, and IPG Campus Batu Lintang. And then I did a reliability test, and it appeared that all the sections were reliable, as the data showed that it was between the range is between 0.68 to 0.8, which means it is reliable. And then after that, I conduct the actual research via Google Form involving 80 pre-service teachers June 2018 intake from IPG KDRI. Okay, moving on to the data analysis procedures. So I did 2 analysis types, which is descriptive analysis and inferential analysis. For objective number 1 and number 2, I did descriptive analysis when I use interpretation of mean and standard deviation. For the third objective, which is inferential, as I was observing the correlation, so I did the Pearson correlation coefficient test. Okay, so these are the findings. I'm going to explain three findings. The first one is what level is the CFR readiness among the respondents? So it shows here that the mean is 3.41. So according to Wiersma's mean interpretation table, 3.41 is considered high. Okay, and then moving on to the second finding, what is the main factor influencing the CFR readiness of the respondents? So I have listed all the dependent variable and independent variables. So from you can see here that training has the highest mean with 3.68, and then followed by competency, CFR and SPA, and content and material selection. Okay, and then for the third finding, the correlation between the level of CFR readiness and the factors influencing CFR readiness. We have for the first factor, which is training, we can see that there is a strong association with CFR readiness. For competency, we have small association with CFR readiness. Next, for content and material selection, it shows moderate association with CFR readiness. But for SBA, there is no correlation as the association was very small, so it is negligible. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so the discussion. The first one is the CFR readiness level among ESL pre-service teachers. June 2018 intake in IPG is high. So like I said, according to the mean interpretation table by Wisma, 3.41 is categorized as high level. And it is in contrast with the research finding from Low 2018 that reveals that high levels, he stated that the CFR readiness level is low because there is high level of concern and anxiety towards implementing the CFR aligned curriculum. So it shows here that this signifies that CFR readiness has increased over the year. Okay, and then the second discussion is the most prominent factor affecting CFR readiness is training. So the majority of the respondents claim that they have received training from their supervisors and their mentor in back when they did practical. So this is in line with my the theory that I selected for my study, which is Vygotski's socio-cultural theory, where people learn better from MKOs. So MKOs is more knowledgeable others, and in this context is supervisor and mentor teacher. Okay, and then despite that, the findings also indicated a severe need for more training, and this is in line with the findings from a previous study by Nurul Fareha and Muhammad Salihuddin in 2017. Okay, so for the final discussion, which is all factors correlate with CFR readiness except for school-based assessment. So training had the strongest correlation, and this is because the respondents received trainings from their respective mentors and supervisors in school, and SBA does not have the correlation with CFR readiness because the major problem is not the curriculum, but other problems such as time constraint, large class enrollments, and heavy workload at school. So these findings were aligned with the statement from Sheikh Sofyan and Rohani, which they stated that the work scope of teachers are getting more complex each day. Okay, so the conclusion here is the CFR readiness level is high among the respondents. The most prominent factor was the training variable, and 3 out of 4 factors showed correlations with CFR readiness. Okay, so next. Okay, so the recommendation and suggestions, I have 3. For the first one is for teachers. Teachers have to do lots of self-improvements, maybe by attending courses related to CFR. And then the second one is for future researchers. The first one, they can explore a more extensive and varied population and sample, as I only did for pre-service teachers in IPGK. So future researchers, they can do for other pre-service teachers from other IPGs. And then look into different factors that affect CFR readiness. So for this study, I only mentioned about 4 factors. So they can look into other factors such as the suitability of CFR textbooks. So the implications, there are three. For ESL teachers, they can reflect on their current level of CFR readiness and their capabilities to implement this CFR aligned curriculum once they begin to offer their service in schools. For IPGM, they can review and revise the effectiveness of the current training programs. And for MOE, they can monitor and evaluate the success of efforts to maintain coordinated communication efforts in the future. So that's all for my presentation.
Thank you, Ili Soleha. Ili Soleha, for being able to present your thesis, your survey this afternoon. Okay, regarding the survey that you have done, okay, what are the main contributions after you have done this survey on the CFR readiness among the ESL pre-service teachers?
Okay, so the main contribution
Yes.
for this study. Okay, so I believe that when I was in semester 3, we were not given a lot of exposure on CFR. So from this study, we can see that training is the most prominent factor to achieve CFR readiness. So from this study, I hope that all the selected parties like IPG, KBM, they can consider on making a lot effort on the training. They can do a lot of trainings for pre-service teachers.
So is there any curriculum in IPG from the
Okay, so I'm not saying that
syllabus?
yes, I'm not saying that I'm just saying that the syllabus back then, okay, when we were in semester 3, there is a pedagogical syllabus where we were trained to how to teach listening and speaking, reading and writing. Okay, back then, CFR is not all educators are well versed on CFR back then. Okay. So at that time, we didn't receive that much training on CFR. So when we go to school for our practical, it was a bit hard, but with the help from English teachers, so they did brief us on CFR, like how they actually did it in school.
Okay, thank you, Idri. I agree with you because I know that most of you have already undergone a very tough time, especially with this CFR that
Yes.
is very less provided by the IPG. Thank you for your hard work. Dr. Mark.
Okay, thank you. Ilya, I have two questions also. One, we all know there is quantitative and qualitative. So far, everybody presented their methodology is quantitative. So can you tell me, because there's a famous saying, quantitative numbers can only identify the problem. Only qualitative can solve the problem. For example, kalau saya buat thesis on masalah merokok, kuantitatif mengapa dia merokok, berapa rokok itu dia buat. Kalau kita nak atasi, you want to solve the problem, you have to counseling them. That is qualitative. So can you tell me why did you choose this method?
Okay, so like I said, I mentioned earlier that there is a lack of study on CFR readiness, right? So I selected quantitative because I wanted to know like the population, like the CFR readiness in that.
Okay, it's enough for me, that answer. The next question is,
Alright.
how useful is your findings?
How useful.
So what is the next step? After you found out that the majority of the Guru Pelatih are ready for this exam, yeah? So what's the use?
Okay, so I agree that in the findings, it is agreed that the pre-service teachers, they are ready, right? But there is most of them also agreed that they need more training. So from this study, it is confirmed that trainings is necessary for them. So they
It
need
doesn't need contrast. You are ready, but you still need training. That
uh,
means you are not that ready lah.
yeah.
Still you need training. Betul tak? So you, okay, never mind. Thank you.
Before we start with
Tak payahlah kalau 2 minit. Siapa presenter? Okay. How is your business online? Why you stop? Huh? Okay. Business is good, you know.
good evening to the panel and the audience. I'm Very Chirorisu from TESOL 4, and for my research study, I did a study to see the TESOL trainee perception of feedback timing to improve speaking skills as teachers and as students. Okay, so the background of the study of my study would be that this one focuses on teacher trainees' perception of timing of feedback. So there's two types of timing of feedback, one being delayed and one being immediate feedback, to improve oral skills as teachers and as students. So what I mean by as learners and as teachers is that as learners, as in teacher trainee while they're learning, and teachers as in based on their practicum experience.
The next is without feedback, the learning design will just become plans to broadcast specific content. So this is why feedback is very important. And multiple studies only focused on why feedback is important and why it's significant without actually considering the students' perception towards it, whether they like that feedback or whether they don't prefer that feedback. Okay, next is this study says that efficacy of feedback timing heavily relies on individual learner. This proves that if a teacher were to present a feedback without actually taking students' personal opinion on the type of feedback, it would not be effective. Okay, the problem statement, like I mentioned, is that there are so many surveys and studies. From what I Googled when I was initially doing this research, I found a lot of surveys really focusing on how effective feedback timing is based on like test scores and grades without actually taking students' perception and opinions. I think that is not really reliable and applicable because students have different sort of like needs and learning abilities. So this is why I decided to test and to explore what the teacher trainee perception is towards the two types of feedback timing. Okay, so here we can see from this study that students only benefit from feedback if they are satisfied with the quality and manner of the feedback. So this study kind of like strengthens my premise of the survey, that is students will only benefit if the feedback is appropriate according to them. And then inappropriate timing will result in dire consequences that will affect their speaking abilities. So one thing inappropriate timing will do is not only will it make them anxious, but it can also permanently stop them from actually wanting to attempt to speak anymore. Yeah, okay. So the third one is purpose of study. My purpose of my study is to look into the perception of TESOL students' perception towards two types of feedback timing and the relationship of that feedback timing to improving their oral skills. And it's also to differentiate respondents' personal perception towards different feedback timing in terms of suitability and their emotions to improve their oral skills. So what this basically means is that to differentiate and to explore what our teacher trainee feel towards immediate feedback and delayed feedback as learners and as well as educators. Okay, next is to explore the difference in opinion between the respondents as learners and as teachers. So this is to see if there is a difference in perception between these feedbacks based on their learning experience and based on their teaching experience. So for example, do teacher trainees of our campus feel like immediate feedback is more useful when they are learners, but not as useful when they were teaching in practicum? Okay, so these are my research objectives. The first one is to identify which timing of feedback is perceived as more important to improve speaking skills in the classroom based on TESOL students' teaching experience. That's the first one. The second one, to identify timing of feedback is perceived as more important to improve speaking skills based on their experience as learners. And the third one is to identify if there's a difference in perception based on their learning, like I explained, whether they feel one is better when they teach and one is better when they learn. Okay. Okay, so research question is very similar to the research objectives. And the first one is immediate or delayed feedback perceived as more important to improve oral skills in the classroom based on the teacher's TESOL trainees, including a teacher's teaching experience? The second is immediate or delayed feedback perceived as more important in the classroom to improve oral activities based on their learning experience? And the last one is to see if there's a difference in perception towards importance of immediate and delayed feedback to improve speaking skills based on TESOL trainees' teaching and learning experience. Okay, so the significance of research. So the significance of my research, as mentioned earlier, is to see if there's an influence between timing of feedback and improving oral skills, specifically on learner speaking abilities. Okay, the second is the efficacy of feedback is dependent on several factors, one being the timing. So to provide good and effective feedback, teachers have to take into consideration the timing of feedback. Okay, so the third is to establish the premise feedback given at an inappropriate time will negatively affect students' speaking skills. So as I mentioned earlier, that if these teachers give feedback at an inappropriate time, according to the student, they will not appreciate it, and it will make them more anxious, and it will stop them from actually learning to speak. Okay, the last one is concerns individual abilities and differences, as well as the gravity of inappropriate feedback timing. So this says that the reason why students cannot all accept one type of feedback timing is because of individual differences and individual abilities. So like, for example, some students are more anxious than the other. So these are all things that teachers must take into consideration when they are giving their feedback. Okay, so for my related class research, the first one is by Aubrey and Shintani, where they basically did a study to find out whether which timing of feedback is more important among of Japanese students. But this did not take their personal opinion into consideration. And then the second one is a study among Turkish EFL students, which is very similar to my study, where they took into consideration of the students' perceptions and how they felt towards the feedback styles given to them, including feedback timing. And the finding of this study shows that feedback given at a time that felt uncomfortable for the student was a futile effort and discouraged students. So this, as I mentioned previously, when the feedback is given at the wrong time, it would be futile. So basically, it would be similar to not actually giving the students feedback at all. Research design. So my research is a quantitative survey, quantitative research using survey. And so I use the descriptive research design because it helps me to obtain information to systematically describe a population. So for me, it systematically described a specific group, which is the TESOL trainee of semester 8. Okay, the last one is the date for the study was attained by applying a 5-point scale. Okay, this is the 5-point scale, Likert scale that I used to get the data. Population and sample. So out of all the TESOL trainees of semester 8, I only chose 50. Majority of them were women and the minority were male. I asked them about their age, their class, as well as their perceived language proficiency level. The instruments used for data collection. So this survey, which is a Likert scale survey, consisted of 33 Likert type survey. It has 3 categories, one being the demographics, the second being respondents' perception towards feedback timing as teachers based on their experience, and the third one is respondents' perception towards feedback timing as learners. The link to the Google form was distributed to students for all 5 classes via social media platforms. So this is how I distributed my instrument, which is through Google form by sending it to the class representatives. Okay, so this is my research procedure. So once I have defined my research objective and my research question, I decided to go and complete my survey. And then after that, the pilot study using my survey with 15 respondents from this same batch. So through my pilot study, I put it through the SPSS to get a Cronbach value, and I got a 0.9, which is pretty high, which means I do not have to re-examine my survey because it shows that my survey is pretty valid and pretty reliable. So right after that, I immediately conducted the actual survey. Then I just put it into the SPSS and I analyzed the data. Okay, the next one is data collection procedure. The data were collected using an online survey instrument for the study. Like I mentioned, I used Google Form. The link to this Google Form was distributed to students for all 5 classes via social media platforms. Yeah, so I sent the link to our class representatives and they sent it to their classmates via WhatsApp. And then the third one is respondents were given explanation as well as my contact information. So if they had any issues, they could contact me, and there were explanations. So as in like what did delayed feedback mean and what did immediate feedback mean. And then the fourth one is the survey results were collected and saved in Google Sheets. So automatically the data will be saved in Google Sheets if you use Google Forms. And so right after this, I fed the data to SPSS to analyze the data. Okay, so the next one is data analysis procedure. So first is descriptive statistics were generated on each individual question. So what I did to analyze my data is to find out the mode, mean, and the standard deviation, as well as I came up with table and graphs And to answer my research question number 3, I used the t-test to get the difference between perception based on their teaching and learning experience. Okay, so this is my data finding. This is for research question number 1, which respondents agree that immediate feedback is more effective than delayed feedback. And they also agree that immediate feedback is more suitable. So why they feel that way based on the data is that they believe that immediate feedback is more effective because it can be used in all classroom activities and can be used to correct all language errors like pronunciation and intonation. And they also think it's more suitable compared to delayed feedback because they feel like delayed feedback is more suitable for students with lower proficiency level only. And then we have respondents think that immediate feedback can cause anxiety compared to delayed feedback. So this is what they felt towards immediate feedback when they use this in their classroom. They felt that when they use immediate feedback, some students can actually get anxious. This is the data findings for research question number 2. The respondents felt that immediate feedback is effective for all learning activities and to correct all speaking errors, as I mentioned previously. And then respondents feel similarly towards delayed feedback. Okay, so this data, this research question is based on their experience as learners. So unlike the first research question, they felt like immediate and delayed feedback were important and effective, except that a slight majority felt that immediate was slightly better. Okay, respondents do not think immediate feedback can cause anxiety and it's more motivating compared to delayed feedback. So based on their experience as learners, they do not think that immediate feedback can cause anxiety and they actually feel that it is more motivating compared to getting delayed feedback. Okay, so the third research question is that respondents feel that immediate feedback is effective based on both their learning and teaching experience. This is also similar towards delayed feedback. So they basically feel that immediate feedback is the most effective. However, they don't think like delayed feedback is not effective at all. They just don't think it's appropriate at all times to improve oral skills. But the most distinct difference would be that as learners, they do not think that immediate feedback causes them any sort of anxiety. But when based on their teaching experience, they felt like it did cause the students some sort of anxiety when they use immediate feedback. Okay, so the discussion, just like I mentioned for my findings, is that majority of the respondents believe that immediate feedback is the more reliable type of feedback compared to delayed feedback, and that unlike immediate feedback, they also think that delayed feedback does not motivate students. Respondents strongly believe that immediate feedback has been effective to them to improve all sorts of speaking skills, and based on their learning experience, respondents do not feel anxious. Because basically, they feel very positively towards immediate feedback, and they think that it is, and they think, okay, and they think that this delayed feedback is also very similar. It's just that they think teaching immediate is more effective compared to delayed. Okay, so conclusion, majority of the respondents feel like immediate is the best approach. However, when I calculated the standard deviation values for all of my questionnaire, I found out that there's a difference in opinion because the standard deviation value was pretty high. So there was a high discrepancy showing that even though the majority felt like immediate feedback was better, there was a outlier that wasn't too sure about that decision. So the conclusion is that delivering feedback is an important skill. So teachers should take into consideration the timing of the feedback because it plays a significant role. And then second, the study is aimed to get trainees option on different feedback timing. Third, it also highlights individual differences because no student is the same. They cannot all accept and positively react to the same type of feedback. One style of feedback cannot be effective for all students due to factors such as emotional and behavioral factors. This is very similar to the fact that there are individual differences between students. Okay, so my recommendation is to increase the population and diversifying the sample. So because mine only has 50 respondents from this IPG, it would probably be better and would try a more accurate overview if we had diversified the sample by getting respondents from other colleges and campuses, as well as to increase the population size. Second would be to use other forms of data collection. I use surveys, so I don't think it really gave a clear insight, but I think if someone did an interview, it would be more detailed and we would know why they felt a certain way towards the feedback type. Third will be the surveys should investigate equal number of respondents of lower English proficiency, average proficiency, and high speaking English speakers. So I think this would give a comprehensive finding if the respondents were all equally numbered. So we'll be able to know which group of students, based on their English proficiency level, prefer which kind of feedback. Implication. So for me, and for my study, basically, the implication I hope is to let everyone who reads this to understand that giving feedback is not something that can be done out of a whim, and it has like components that makes it effective. And one of the components is the timing, because timing plays such an important part in making sure that feedback is effective. Second would be to highlight the significance of taking students' perception into consideration. So as mentioned in like all the previous slides and previous studies, it's very important to take students' perception into consideration when it comes to feedback and anything revolving around them, because they're the one that receives it. And if they don't receive it properly, then it would affect their ability to actually learn the language. And it focuses on learning needs and differences, which is very similar to how and why students' perception is very important.
Okay, well done, Swari, for your presentation. And your survey, right? The title of your survey, I think, is very current. Just because of we are having this PKP, MCO, and most of the time, the teachers are carrying out the online teaching, right? Okay, so back to your topic, the feedback, feedback, immediate and delayed feedback. Okay, so I think all the IPG trainee teachers also trainees also having this problem. If let's say you have the synchronous, let's say you have GME, you still can get the immediate feedback if compared to asynchronous. Okay, so now you are going to be a teacher. So what are the issues for you regarding the immediate and delayed feedback?
So I would think that if I became a teacher, my issues regarding immediate and delayed would be that especially because I'm teaching primary school, so I feel like they take things very personally when I correct them. Immediately I correct them in front of the classmates. They'll actually take it personally and think like, oh, a teacher's saying this and I can't speak anymore because I'm very shy, and they won't like speak anymore because they feel like they are weaker compared to the other classmates that don't get corrected. I think that is one like an issue that I would have to sort of like deal with. And then in terms of delayed feedback would be trying to get the student to remember which part exactly, especially when it comes to oral skills. They would have to remember like how did they pronounce it wrongly, or like how did they misuse the intonation. And so if it's delayed, then that would like they would have problems trying to like figure out how exactly they like mispronounced, or so that would be an issue I would face.
Because oral speaking is one of the productive skills, which if possible they will get the immediate feedback, especially like pronunciation, what you have mentioned. Okay, great. Thank you for your answer. Okay, Dr. Mangga.
Yes, thank you. Iswaria. Okay, I got a short, simple question only. Go to your pilot study. Your value for alpha was how much? Alpha was how much?
Oh, I didn't write.
No, you mentioned. What was the value?
0.
0 point. I just want to ask you a simple question. You were very happy that your value was very high and you don't have to redo the pilot test. At what level, below which level you have to do pilot test?
We do the survey. I 0.6
In 6?
or 0.0.
Who can tell me? 0.6 or 0.6 and below. Sometimes it's 0.7. So if you get 0.9, it's high. So as researchers, you must know all this, you see. That's why I just asking that question. Anyway, thank you. Well done.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon. I've been to both panels, Mr. Chan and Dr. Manga, and also all my other friends here. So my name is Irina Farisha binti Hanafi from Lesson 3, and I'm going to present my research today entitled A Survey on ESL Teacher Trainees Perspective, the factors influencing the quality of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. So throughout the process of me completing my thesis, I was supervised by Madam Suhana binti Ahmad. Okay, next. So following the outbreak of COVID-19 in the early 2020, the entire world was compelled to go into total lockdown to maintain social distance and to prevent the virus from spreading to the other parts of the globe. So the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in the closure of schools, universities, and many other facilities in many countries, not only in Malaysia. So in the absence of traditional classroom instruction, or we call it as one-on-one interaction, computer-based learning or virtual learning has emerged as the most viable or suitable substitute for offline instruction. So since this e-learning wave is still in its preliminary stages, both teachers and students are still adjusting to this new teaching and learning methodology. So it is critical to investigate the learners' thoughts and inclinations to this novel teaching methodology, and it is even more crucial to ensure every student receives a high quality education despite not being able to attend physical classroom. Okay, next. Alright, so the statement of problem. So according to RADA and others 2020, quality has become increasingly important in modern education, particularly among institutions engaged in virtual learning. Hence, it is important for us to establish standards for the quality of virtual learning. So there are studies associated with the quality of e-learning from the student's point of view. However, studies on Malaysian students, particularly those in higher education institutions during the COVID-19 pandemic, are very rare. So generally, and another issue is that students across the country are struggling to focus and retain information with distance learning, and actually they are learning less compared to the previous years of schooling, which has affected the quality of education. And this one I cited from Mustafa 2021. Okay, next. So the purpose of the study. So there are Malaysian universities have many difficulties, particularly in attempting to bring the online learning systems up to a certain level of quality. So according to Rashid, he noted in his study that students have found themselves in this situation, which is pure online learning, without any strategy or preparation, and that this has had a significant impact on the quality of education received by the students. So this study aims to identify further the primary factor affecting the quality of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic based on the perspectives of ESL teacher trainees in IPG KDRI. Also, this study aims to analyze the relationship between the quality of virtual learning during the outbreak and the 7 independent factors, which are administrative support, course content, course design, lecturer characteristics, student characteristics, technical support, and social support. Okay, next. So the research objective, I have two. Number one is to identify the major factor influencing the quality of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. And number two is to analyze the relationship between the quality of virtual learning and the 7 independent variables I have mentioned just now. Okay, next, for my research questions, okay, the two, number one is what is the major factor influencing the quality of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic from the perspectives of ESL teacher trainees in FPG KDRI? And number two, what is the relationship between the quality of virtual learning and the 7 independent variables? So the significance of my research, the study findings will assist FPG KDRI's top management and administrators in making critical decisions, such as on how to improve the quality of e-learning during this COVID-19 pandemic. And next, it will assist administrators, lecturers, and teacher trainees in identifying the advantages and disadvantages of the virtual learning system in FPG KDRI. And lastly, it will assist students in improving their academic performance and providing them with the moral support they need to survive in these unprecedented times. Okay, next. So related past research, I have outlined 3 different past research. Number one is from Sharifah Nilda Amirul 2020. And the title is Evaluating the Online Learning Effect in COVID-19. So the study findings show that the students at University of Malaysia Sabah were satisfied with their lecturer system quality, information quality, and services. However, the level of satisfaction with online learning is based solely on the ease of using the online learning platform, not on the ease of learning. Okay. The next, P and others 2021 examine the factors influencing students' virtual learning performance during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the hypothesis test revealed that 6 factors listed in descending order influence the students' virtual learning outcomes. So number 1, the factors were student characteristics, user satisfaction, course content, course design, ease of use, and the capacity of the faculty member teaching the course. Okay. And last but not least, in a study conducted by Swan and others 2000, factors that contributed to the success of asynchronous online learning. So the study's finding reveals that consistency in course design, communication with course instructors, practical discussion have been repeatedly demonstrated to significantly impact online courses effectiveness. So it was hypothesized that one possible explanation for these findings was the importance of community building in online learning environment. Okay, so for the research design, for my study, I use quantitative approach that employs a survey design in which the ESL trainees serve as the study participants. Okay, so considering that last time educational institutions were forced to close due to COVID-19, so I have decided to use online survey method using Google Form. And according to Evans and Masa 2005, online surveys can also be administered promptly, reducing the time required to gather the necessary information. Okay, next. Okay, so my population. So my population consists of all ESL teacher trainees in FPG KJRI. So there are 249 teacher trainees altogether. And the sample was selected using the sample size formula developed by Cathy and Morgan in 1970. So from there, 152 respondents were selected. All right, so research instrument. So I use questionnaire using Google Form, and the questions were adapted from published research by Sankar and others 2020. So I use these questions from this published research due to its similarity of the list of items or list of questions that I want to ask in the questionnaire. And also this questionnaire utilized a 5-point Likert scale. And for the validity, I have also my supervisor have evaluated the instruments prior to the distribution of questionnaire. We also have the overall reliability score is 0.93, indicating that it achieves an exceptionally high level of to be used in study. All right, next. Okay, so this is the research procedure. I start off with selection of topic and clarification of research objective and research question. Moving on to reviewing literature, identifying the research design, moving on to data collection, data analysis, and lastly, drawing conclusion. And next is data collection procedure. So I conducted pilot tests, okay, which involved 30 respondents. Okay, and then I checked for the reliability and it's 0.93. After that, I start distributing the link to the real sample, which is the 152 respondents. And then the respondents answer the survey. After they have completed the survey, I transfer the data into SPSS and begin data analyzing. So data analysis procedure. So I have two different data analysis. Number one is descriptive and second is inferential. So the descriptive, it was analyzed using SPSS. In the data from the Google form into the SPSS and find the mean and standard deviation for each factor to answer the first research objective and present the findings in the form of tables, pie charts, and also histogram. For inferential, I also analyzed the data using SPSS, using Pearson's product moment because I'm going to find the correlation. So after I have already keyed in the data from the Google form, I ran correlation tests in the SPSS and present the findings in the form of tables. Right, next. Okay, so this is the data findings. So to answer the first research question, what is the major factor affecting the quality of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic from the perspectives of the SL teacher trainees in FPG KDRI? So from my findings, out of all the 7 factors, student characteristic records the highest mean, which is 4.22, followed by course content, technical support, lecturer characteristics, social support, administrative support, and lastly is course design. And next is for my research questions number 2. What are the relationships between the quality of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic and the 7 independent variables? So the first factor, course design, records the highest Pearson correlation coefficient value, which is 0.818, followed by lecturer characteristics, social support, technical support, student characteristics, course content, and lastly, administrative support. Right, so for the discussion, so as I've mentioned just now, student characteristic records the highest mean among all. So the relatively high mean shows that the students benefit a lot from the implementation of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, for example, the highest mean 4.47 for item, virtual learning assisted students to adapt to new technology, implies that the respondents agree that they are now better at adapting to new technological changes and ready to explore new technology for self-betterment. Okay, so however, the lowest mean, 3.93, is for virtual learning enhanced students' motivation and learning style, which shows that most of the respondents are having difficulty remaining motivated and enhancing their learning styles. Okay, okay, so for research questions number 2, the finding reveals that there is a high correlation between course design and the quality of virtual learning, and the R value is 0.818. For the respondents' answer in the survey given shows that they experience a meaningful learning despite not being able to be in a physical classroom with their peers and lecturers. So they are satisfied with the classwork and assessments given by the lecturer, as it does not burden them, especially during this trying time. Okay. So to conclude, student characteristics is the most prominent factor that influences the quality of virtual learning during the COVID-19 pandemic based on the perspectives of ESL teacher trainees in RPG Career I. And all of the 7 factors that I have mentioned earlier have a significant relationship with the quality of virtual learning, with the value ranging from 0.6 to 0.8. Okay, so the factor that recorded the highest Pearson correlation coefficient value is course design. Next, recommendations. So first is for future researchers. It is recommended that the future researchers develop a large scale survey whereby they take into consideration participants from public universities such as matriculations to be the study participants. And also to compare states, gender, age, and courses to see if there is any difference between them. Okay, and then next for administrators. Administrators can identify the effectiveness of online learning on teacher trainees' performance, and maybe they can also determine to what extent the implementation of virtual learning can assist in success by conducting regression analysis in SPS. Next, so for the third recommendation is by having parents to play their roles at home. So according to Gao and others 2021, creating a learning-friendly environment, modeling positive emotions, and exhibiting the ability to help the children in more family support is very important. Okay, and last but not least, it is recommended for lecturers to give more support to the students by preparing more interactive and engaging learning materials to motivate and attract the students' interest to learn, to reach out to the students, and allow them to share their concerns and reflections on their learning. Okay, so lastly, next, for implication for administrators to create online portals, like create online portals to help the students complete the assignments and prepare for the final examination. And also it is advised for the administrators to frequently monitor online interaction between lecturers and teacher trainees so that they can provide constructive feedbacks. And for lecturers, this study helped lecturers to improve and modify their teaching pedagogy and by creating more interactive and engaging lessons and also providing support. And lastly, this study, next, for the Ministry of Education, they can develop better learning platform by implementing new initiatives to improve the quality of virtual learning. For example, by providing more opportunities for lecturers or teachers or students to participate in online seminars or workshops regarding the online learning. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Itina Farisha.
Yes.
Congratulations for your presentation this afternoon. Okay, just want to know what made you do this piece of research and
Okay.
why? Yeah?
Okay, thank you
Why
for
did
your
you
question.
choose this topic as well?
Okay, so during the MCO, so I have like come across many news, many complaints from my friends. Even I've read some people writing on Facebook, Twitter, like they complain that they are learning less if compared to the previous years, if compared to the previous years of schooling. So I think that um, I think that education is very important and it is very crucial to for every student to receive a high quality education. So I think for me, it's better for me to carry out a study whereby I can find out the factors that can influence the quality of visual learning in IPG KDRI, in my institute, in my own university.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I also don't have any definite questions. Diana Farisha, as we all know, at these taxing times, we had to go online. Definitely, it's not as effective as face-to-face class. But you said that many were complaining on the social media. They were not happy that learning was not going on well.
Yes.
But many enjoyed also, you see.
Yeah.
They were sleeping, they were drinking coffee, and they blamed, if anything, where's Ahmad? Ahmad, where are you? They blamed later, he said the line was not
Yeah.
there. So it all comes to discipline. Comes to discipline, sincerity. Okay, even answering the quantitative questions, it comes to sincerity. And that sincerity affects the validity and the reliability of your research. Because in Malaysia, it is known when they question, adakah anda tahu hak-hak asasi 1 to 4. Nowadays, they prefer 1 to 4. They don't want 5. 1 to 4. Either they don't want the center one all the time, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So now they prefer 1 to 4 in quantitative. So are you competent on this? You don't want to say you are not
Not sure.
not sure or less competent. You also all the time you want to portray that you are confident. You either put 3 or 4. So the sincerity is always questionable in quantitative. It is better to do research where you combine both quantitative and qualitative. That is the trend now. Kita identify dengan menggunakan quantitative, and later we try to solve or get clearer picture dengan interview. Of course, interview sample dia kurang kalau banding dengan quantitative. But itulah better if we can do both. Maybe for this time, it's not suitable for you to go and interview. So, it's okay. Ini cadangan saja for future. That's all. Anyway, congratulations. You did well.
Thank you for your suggestion. Thank you.
I need 1 minute.
Good evening, I be to both panels, the Chan, the Commander, and my I'm Ulfat Alakim from Vessel 4 to the my research presentation on of the fulfillment of research in education subject SLB 2173, and the topic of my study would be the effects of group work in English language learning. Okay, one, I think. Alright, background of the study. In responding to the changing educational needs, there is a trend towards educational system in English as a second language. The trend is quite different from the traditional one because traditional one, the teacher used to apply chalk and top method, and the students uh, used to feel bored and stressful. And this in turn makes students actively involved in the process of learning and teaching, where students have more chance to experiment with second language, and that term is group work. Right? Group work is a generic term covering a diversity of techniques in which two or more students are assigned tasks that involve collaboration and self-initiated language, stated by Brown in 2011. And it is a second one, it is a learning activity which involves a small group of learners working together. The group may work on a single task or on different parts of a larger task. All right. Based from these definitions, it can be concluded that group work is actually where people or students they work together to settle or to finish to settle some settlement of problems. Speaking of learners' emotion while learning, some of them might encounter some difficulties in using the language. They felt anxious to interact with their lecturers in the classroom. According to Foster, it is suggested that by setting up support activities in a learning environment, it will avoid the anxiety that hinders the students from utilizing the language. Some learners of the language would find it is very difficult to learn English in the classroom by themselves. Hence, by establishing group work, right? Now we talk about the benefit of group work. Group work, it may give some advantages for different needs of learners. Thus, the study's purpose is to explore and examine the effects of group work in English language learning. Alright, the purpose of the study, this study aims to first to identify the effects to work on learners in English language from the journals articles that I've read. I would list down several effects and in the survey, and the student, I think the students, they will fill in the survey choosing uh, the most suitable effect according to their needs, what they get from the group work. The second one is to find out the most significant effect of the work on learners in English language classroom. Based on the effects, right? I will find the highest effect the effect that received the highest amount of agree from the student. Right. The research objectives, I have two here. The first one is to identify the effects of the work activities on learners in English language classroom. This one is to analyze the most significant effect of the work on learners in English language classroom. There is a question: what are the effects of the work on learners in English? The second one: what is the most significant effect of the work on learners in English language classroom? Alright, significance of research. The implementation of the work is essential to support the language learners acquiring the language. The findings of this study will contribute to the benefit of the work among learners, typically in English. By investigating the effect, the benefits of the work will also be right. In order to have a good effect in learning the target language, lecturers or educators need to think critically to establish enjoyable and meaningful lessons for students. Thus, lecturers may also the effectiveness of the activities that are undertaken during the classroom session. Activities cannot be viewed as proper not only for the lecturer, but also is engaging for the language learners. Right, related past research. I have two here. The first one, okay, learning is in a group should be conducted in at least or usually fewer than 20 persons that are able to share some information within the group. The benefits, okay, the first one is interdependent. Second is influence one another over some period of time, have a sense of mutual belonging. All right, this is first. And maintain norms and standards for membership. And the last one is uh, engage in can engage in interactive communication. At the same time, it can improve the social skills of the students. All right, the second one is by Richard, in 2015, learning activity which involves a small group of learners working together. The group will work on a single task or on different parts of the project. Okay, research design. I utilize survey because survey is an appropriate method of collecting data if the researcher wish to know about the opinion, attitude, and perspective of respondents. Because in the survey, in the questions, in the items, it also consists of perception, but then I didn't make it like a topic, a wide topic. It's just it's a, right. The population sample, the population supposed to be 137 students in general courses who are currently in their degree program June 2018 and June 2020 of them. And the sample would be 70 IP students from June 2018 and June 2020 intake. Right? Um, okay. Back to the previous. All right. This one, 70 of them. There were about 39 students from June 2020 intake and 31 of them from June 2018 intake. Instrument used for data collection, which is PISMP. An online survey form has been created and conducted as the instrument of the study. The online form consists of two sections, which are section A and section B. The survey is intended to look for responses from respondents by filling up close-ended questions. The other breakdowns of the online survey form. All right, section A, demographic information form such as intake. Right, I just want to know about the intake because usually they have gender, uh, age, right? Okay, and the second one is general. Second section B, general information effects of work quantitatively. There are 34 items under section B. Research procedure. Right, the first is to identify an issue. All right. Second is to write and present research proposal. All right, like we did during our fundamentals of research in semester 5. And next is to analyze and state the background of the study. After that, develop the research objectives and questions. Right, some people they have 3, 4, but I only have 2. And next is choose the target population example, right, from the uh, from the study animal partner. And the next is to get approval, preliminary study, pilot study, right? I just want to share. Pilot study I received the compa alpha was 0.735, and I choose 24 out of 70 to become the
Sample.
yeah. All right, and the next is establish the validity and reliability, and is to collect and analyze the data, after that to write report, and the last one is present the report. All right, data collection procedures. The first one, the researcher uses soft sample size calculator to achieve the recommended size of respondents for the study, like effect on the population, and then the result of the sample would be reviewed. And the second one, the researcher, the next is, the next procedure is, the researcher developed a questionnaire using Google Forms to test quantitative items. And after that, the researcher distributed the link of the online survey by WhatsApp to students in 2018 into 2020 due to COVID-19 virus outbreak. So the an online application like WhatsApp has been utilized in order to get this information. The researcher will analyze the population of data using and the researcher will look up for findings and interpretations of the study from the perspective. All right, data analysis procedure. Okay, here reliability test from alpha, as I said just now. The second one is a descriptive analysis, where I find the mean and the standard deviation for the items under the data finding. Right now we move to data finding. All right, in terms of standard deviation and mean. Most of the students, I have 34 items, and most of the students, they choose these 4 items as I mean, they choose 4 because yeah, as you can see, because the mean is above 4.0 and above. So these are the items that I have shown uh, to show that most of the students, they will agree on this. They agree on this. Right. You can see the highest mean score, 4.39, for the item Google enables me to participate in sharing information, making decisions, and solving problems. 70% of them agree that they agree to this. And the highest mean score uh, was 4.39, and that is the most significant effect of work in English language learning. That is also my research question number 2. Discussions, all right, are to one, students believe that group work helps them to understand the working process. Besides, it enables them to participate in sharing information, making decisions, and problem solving. However, it helps them to acquire knowledge by working in a team, and it creates a good relationship among group members. All right, R2 number 2, like I said just now, the highest number of students agree that group work enables them to participate in sharing information, making decisions, and solving problems as the most significant effect of group work in English language learning. The conclusion. Implementation of group work in learning English gives good effect to students. In fact, group work makes a good impact for a student to reach the goals of the learning language efficiently. Based on the effects investigated, it shows that group work is one of the effective approach to be applied, especially in learning English as a second language. The recommendations to the teacher or the lecturer. Lecturer should vary the teaching methods by increasing the usage of work element for educational purposes. Because if the student work individually, they can just improve individually. But then if they work together, many benefits or many effects can be uh, achieved, and that effects benefit not only one student, but more than that. Right. The second recommendation to the future researcher should be done on the effects of work on another skill students, maybe from different campus, students level, like because we are now in undergraduate, we are undergraduate students, right? Maybe the study could also be implemented to the postgraduate students. Right? The implications, pupils can improve learning skills through the implementation of work activities. Teachers become aware of the benefits of implementing work learning method in classes. All right, because from this research, the lecturers would know about the benefits. Okay, and then and from that, it would be easier. It will be easier for them to implement the work in. All right, Ministry of Education can formulate a framework to enhance the work style in learning in Malaysia education. The work learning style is considered as student-centered learning, right? So the students be will be in classroom. Not only because the teacher-centered, the teacher will give everything, but then the student-centered, the students will work together to benefit the input given by the teacher, and from that output could be received, right, by the right. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. Congrats, Abe, for your presentation. Okay, I just heard from you about the group work. You always mention good effect, good effect. Can you be specific? What are the advantages of group work and how you want to carry out group work in terms of now we are having the online learning? How you carry out group work or the online learning?
Okay. The first one is regarding the benefits of the work, right? Right. Just now, the research question number 2, what the most significant effect of group work? It helps students in sharing information, uh, solving the problems, and making the decisions. And how to implement group work while learning online. I think it also can be done via Google Meet also, because before this, when we uh, gone through subjects that requires us to do a presentation together, we will record it, and before that we will discuss it in Google Meet also. And after that, actually we can utilize online application, not only Google Meet, not only WhatsApp, more than that, like Zoom.
Okay, no, I have no questions. Thank you.
So for me, thank you.
Yeah. Collect the marks. Okay, okay, well. Hello?
And before we end, we'd like the panel to start because we have
Then?
some social notification.
Oh. Wait.